Hello and welcome to another intensivecarehotline.com live stream. If you want to know the 10 reasons why LTACs in the US are a scam, I encourage you to stay on this call today because you will find out why there are 10 reasons why LTACs in the US are a scam. Now, welcome to this live stream. My name is Patrick Hutzel. I'm the founder of intensivecarehotline.com, where we provide a consulting and advocacy service for families in intensive care all around the world. We are doing a lot of work in the US specifically, which is why today's live stream is specifically targeted towards our US audience. If you're watching this on replay, I also want to welcome you. And, before I dive into today's topic, what makes me qualified to talk about 10 reasons why LTACs in the US are a scam. Well, I've worked in critical care for nearly 25 years in 3 different countries, where I also worked as a nurse manager for over 5 years. And I have been consulting and advocating for families in intensive care all over the world since 2013. And we have been saving many lives here at intensivecarehotline.com with our critical nurse consulting team and our critical care nurse consultants. And you can verify our results and successes if you look at our testimonial section at intensivecarehotline.com. You can also look at our podcast section at intensivecarehotline.com, where we have some client interviews verifying everything that I'm saying. Now, without further ado, let's get into today's topic. Now, one more thing, I'm also the founder and managing director of intensivecareathome.com, where we provide up to 24-hour nursing care with intensive care nurses at home, replicating an ICU bed in the community. And we've been doing so since 2012 here at Intensive Care at Home. We are predominantly working all around Australia at the moment with intensive care at home. Let's get into today's topic. 10 reasons why LTACs in the US are a scam. Now, why I came up with this topic in the first place is I'm talking to people in the US every day. And a lot of the questions that we're getting from our clients is simply, how do we stop my loved one going from ICU to LTAC because they realize there is danger looming, right? And with danger looming, they realize we need to put a stop to it. Or on the other end, we have families in LTAC in the US contacting us saying, help me to get out of LTAC. That's how bad it is. And, I've been listening to this for many, many years. We've developed many proven strategies to keep our clients out of LTAC to begin with. But we also developed many strategies to get our clients from LTAC back to ICU. So we've done both, and that is a good thing. But let's get into the 10 reasons why LTACs in the US are a scam. Also, if you enjoy my videos, subscribe to my YouTube channel for regular updates for families in intensive care. Click the like button, click the notification bell, and always leave your comments so that I know what is of interest for you for my next videos. So let's dive into number one, why LTACs in the US are a scam. Number one, there are no ICU nurses in LTAC. Now, one of the first things that I realized when I even came across LTACs was, well, how can you send a patient that's just left ICU on a ventilator with a tracheostomy, sometimes with dialysis, many other complexities? How can you send them to an LTAC where there are no ICU nurses? It's almost too comical to be true. It's not comical at all. It is actually very life-threatening. But when I first heard about it, I couldn't believe it, that this is actually a thing, that patients go from ICU where they have a 1-to-1, 1-to-2 nurse-to-patient ratio, and then they go to an LTAC where there are no ICU nurses. It's shocking. And that's one of the main reasons why LTACs are a scam. Number two, there are no ICU doctors. Well, similar than number one, how can you send someone from ICU to another facility, to LTAC, which is not even the better version of a nursing home from my experience, right? And there are no ICU doctors. How can you wean someone off a ventilator without ICU doctors and ICU nurses present? But I'll come to that a bit more in detail about the weaning in ICU. You know, some of the things that I've seen over the many years doing this is that some ICUs really from day one, they're trying to push the tracheostomy and the PEG tube. This is for US ICUs specifically. And then they want to send patients out to LTAC as quickly as possible, wash their hands clean, instead of focusing on avoiding the trach, avoiding the PEG, and focusing on ventilation weaning and taking out the breathing tube and focusing on removal of the breathing tube, rather than focusing on avoiding the ventilation, avoiding the tracheostomy, and avoiding LTAC. And the reason for that is sometimes it can take a lot longer to actually wean someone off a ventilator and the breathing tube, rather than doing a trach and a PEG early and then send them to LTAC. So you have to do your research from day one, because when you have a loved one in intensive care, you are in a once-in-a-lifetime situation that you simply can't afford to get wrong. It's very simple, you know, and you can't underestimate this. You know, we have so many families coming to us when it's too late, you know, and their loved one has passed away, and then they realize there's consulting and advocacy out there, and they come to us when it's too late. You need to take 100% responsibility for outcomes. Most families, 99% of families, don't even think that's a possibility. Well, it is a possibility, but you need to make that decision that you do take full responsibility. Number three, next reason why LTACs are a scam is that they, generally speaking, don't mobilize patients, right? So what does that mean? Well, when you look at LTACs websites, they often position themselves as the specialists in ventilation and tracheostomy weaning. Well, nothing could be further from the truth, right? Nothing could be further from the truth. And one of the missing links why they can't wean patients off the ventilator is because they don't mobilize patients early on, right? I have not seen many successful ventilation weans without patients being mobilized, having regular physical therapy and physiotherapy on a day-by-day basis, right? And that leads me to my next point, which is part of that point, that there is no regular physical therapy, right? Again, mobilization, having regular physical therapy, that's all part of a weaning plan. It's very simple, right? And it's also common sense. But in this day and age, common sense doesn't seem to be all that common, or does it? Number four, LTACs are a scam because ICUs as well as LTACs are misleading patients and families in ICU. That goes back to my point earlier that I harped on very briefly, that some ICUs in the US are focusing on doing a tracheostomy and a PEG tube early, day one, day two in ICU, telling families, hey, we need you to do a trach and a PEG. It's almost like ambushing them, right? And saying, oh, then your loved one can go to LTAC, without looking at what can they fix in ICU. How can they avoid the trach and the PEG? How can they wean your loved one off the ventilator with the breathing tube, avoid the trach and the PEG? you have to ask the right questions when you have a loved one in intensive care. The goal is always to get someone off the ventilator and the breathing tube to begin with, not to focus on trach and peg and then send them off to LTAC. Those are the wrong priorities. So here is also what I mean by that. And this is why, this is a specific video today for our US audience. But I want to explain to you what's happening in other countries so you can understand why I'm saying don't focus on trach and peg, focus on extubation and a removal of the breathing tube. So in most other English-speaking countries, well, as a matter of fact, in all other English-speaking countries, Canada, Australia, the UK, Ireland, New Zealand, there are no LTACs. So what that means, there is real pressure in ICU in those countries to avoid a trach. And even if patients need a trach, to wean them. There is real pressure on that. And the success rates are much higher than in the US as far as I can see, right? So the pressure in ICU is on from day one to remove the breathing tube. If the breathing tube can't be removed, okay, let's do a tracheostomy and then focus on weaning. Whereas in the US, it's like there's no pressure in ICU to wean and avoid the tracheostomy because they know there's an LTAC on the other end who willingly will take your loved one, right? That's a danger in and of itself. It's no longer performance-based. It's all system-based because the system is geared to provide not the best care and treatment by sending patients to LTAC, right? It's a dangerous setup and it's designed to save money. It's not designed for best clinical care or in the interest of patients and families. Other reasons why LTACs and ICUs are misleading families and patients in ICU is simply, they're not really telling them what's on the other end. For example, when patients go to LTAC, there's often a 30-day window where LTACs have 30 days time to wean your loved one off the ventilator. And then if that doesn't happen, and it often doesn't because they're not mobilizing, they don't have weaning plans, they don't have the skills to wean, right? And then they send them off to a SNF or to a skilled nursing facility, and things will go from bad to worse, right? So that's some of the misleading steps that ICUs and LTACs take, but here's another misleading step, right? So I keep mentioning many ICUs focus on trach and peg early on to send them off, out of sight, out of mind, right? Here's what's also dangerous about that. Number one, a trach, I believe, often can be avoided if the ICUs were doing the right things from the beginning: wean sedation, wean opiates, wean ventilation, mobilize and keep them in ICU for a little bit longer rather than sending them to LTAC and focus on the weaning process, and definitely not do a PEG. Whilst a tracheostomy in some situations is definitely necessary, a PEG is completely unnecessary. So a PEG is only really necessary for someone who can't be weaned off the ventilator beyond the shadow of a doubt. Most of you watching this, your loved one can be weaned off the ventilator with the right help, with the right recipes, with the right approach. They can be all weaned off the ventilator. There's no need for a PEG tube whatsoever, right? A PEG tube gives the perception of permanency. A nasogastric tube will do the same job, and the perception of a nasogastric tube is the perception of it's temporary. So we need to train this person to eat and drink again. Whereas with a PEG tube, the perception is, oh, this person will never eat and drink orally again, right? Very different perception. And you need to fight it from day one. Now, also with LTACs and ICUs misleading patients and families in ICU, I also encourage you to look up LTAC reviews online and see what patients and families say. And I just leave it there. You'll be shocked. It won't be good, right? The online reviews speak volumes and speak very, very loudly. Now, number four and number five was LTACs are misleading patients and families. And number 6 is that LTACs don't have weaning plans. So what do I mean by that? when we talk to LTACs or we look at medical records in LTACs, there's no weaning plan documented. It's hit and miss. All they seem to focus on is cash in the money, but not do the work, because, they say, oh, if we can't wean your loved one off the ventilator, then we will need to send them to a skilled nursing facility. And, that's just not good enough, right? That seems to be the focus, as much as the focus seems to be in an ICU in the US, do a trach and peg as quickly as possible, right? Then the next focus when patients are in LTAC, even though they've been positioned as weaning off the that they're specialized in weaning patients off tracheostomy and ventilation, right? Then the next thing you hear from them is, oh, we need to send your loved one to a SNF or skilled nursing facility if they can't come off the ventilator. But often they're not willing to do the work, which is a weaning plan, mobilization, physical therapy. So when we talk to LTACs directly or we review medical records in LTAC, right, there's often no weaning plan documented, right, which is telling me the blind is leading the blind, and the lack of specialist care, is just in everyone's eyes. There is no specialist care, which is what you need to wean someone off the ventilator successfully, right? I have not seen patients being weaned off the ventilator or a trach without a weaning plan, right? That should tell you everything you need to know about the skill levels in LTAC. Okay, number 7. There are no specialty doctors in LTAC, right? One of the biggest pet peeves that I have with LTACs is simply that, when a patient is in ICU critically ill, there's all the specialist doctors, starting from intensive care specialists, of course, all the way to, hematology, infectious disease, cardiologist, neurologist, neurosurgeon, whichever specialty you need, it's all there, right? You go to LTAC, they barely have a doctor on site 24 hours a day. If it is a doctor, it's a hospitalist, but not a intensive care consultant or a pulmonologist, right? So, and again, families only find out when they first go there, right? They don't know that beforehand, which is another reason why I keep saying, before you even go to LTAC, you need to look at those places. You need to look at least 5 different places, and let me know what you see. I can promise you it won't be good, right? I haven't seen anyone. Oh, I would really like to go to this LTAC. I haven't seen anyone yet, right? So, and you can't be relying on specialty input over the phone. You actually need to see patients. You need to consult with other specialties, and you just don't get that at LTAC, right? So that leads me to point number 8, which is the nurse to patient ratio, right? So in ICU, you usually have a 1-to-1, 1-to-2 nurse to patient ratio, whereas in LTAC, all of a sudden it drops to 1-to-4, 1-to-5, sometimes 1-to-10 overnight. Imagine a ventilated patient needs a 1-to-1 nurse to patient ratio with an intensive care nurse, right? That's why patients can't be weaned off the ventilator in LTAC, because they simply lack the skills, the resources, right, and the know-how. You're getting a second-class workforce, again, with all respect to the individuals, of course, but compared to the work that is needed to be done, it's a second-class workforce, right? And you have second-class management, who just focuses on maximizing revenue rather than outcomes. You can't be weaning patients off the ventilator with a 1-to-4, 1-to-5, or even 1-to-10 nurse to patient ratio without ICU nurses. But even if you had an ICU nurse, 1-to-4, 1-to-5, 1-to-10 wouldn't be safe. That's why patients die in LTAC prematurely, right? And unnecessarily. It's completely preventable. Next. Now, there's complete lack of transparency when it comes to a transfer from ICU to LTAC, and here is why. Well, like I said to you, and I keep repeating myself here, but I think it is so important for you to understand. Many ICUs focus on early tracheostomy and PEG tube in the US rather than focusing on weaning off the ventilator and the breathing tube and avoiding a trach and a PEG. Right. And then they try and send patients to LTAC as quickly as possible, saying, oh, LTACs are specialized on ventilation and tracheostomy weaning. Well, once again, that is not the case, right? Most of our clients that we work with, they say, look, when my loved one went to LTAC, they went backwards pretty quickly because we realized the care is just so poor, right? And I also encourage you to watch some of my YouTube comments that readers are, or watchers, viewers are making. It's pretty much confirming everything that I'm saying here. So then when patients go first to LTAC, all of a sudden, like I said earlier, briefly, then they get told, well, if we can't wean your loved one off the ventilator in the next 2 weeks, we then have to send them to a skilled nursing facility, to a SNF, where things go from bad to even worse, right? Families don't see that coming. And without ICU nurses, without a weaning plan, without mobilization, without physical therapy, your critically ill loved one is doomed, absolutely doomed. Next, when patients go to LTAC unnecessarily, prematurely, and it should have been completely avoided, they often bounce back to ICU within 24 to 48 hours. Seen it so many times, right? But here's the kicker. It's bad enough that your loved one goes to LTAC and then bounces back to ICU within 24, 48, 72 hours. But it is, the worst thing here is they're bouncing back into a different ICU, right? So what that means is they're bouncing back to, a completely different ICU. And then your loved one would have been in 3 different places within a short period of time. Whilst they are the most vulnerable they've probably ever been in their entire lifetime. That is madness. I do believe it's criminal behavior. I do believe it's criminal. And it's not holistic care. It is care designed for the system to maximize money flows, and but it is not designed in the best interest of patients and families. Right? Simply isn't. So that's one of the many reasons why you need to stop a transfer to LTAC at all costs, because you don't want your loved one to go from LTAC to LTAC, from ICU to LTAC and then back to an ICU within no time. You're dealing with 3 different teams all of a sudden within no time. And the left hand wouldn't know what the right hand is doing. Patients and families need consistency, and they're not getting consistency if they're going from facility or hospital to hospital. Next. Sometimes we have families coming to us and they're saying, hey, ICU wants to send me to LTAC. I'm in Florida, but they want to send my loved one to Georgia. Or another thing that I heard just this week is, again, a client in Florida. They want to send their loved one to LTAC in Illinois. I mean, I have no words for that, right? I have absolutely no words for that. And once again, I argue it's criminal behavior. It's not that there are no LTACs in Florida, right? I don't know the rationale behind it. Is it that they don't want families around so they can do whatever they want? One has to wonder if that is the case, right? I don't know. It's pretty bad. It's so bad, But unless you've been in those situations, you don't even know how bad it is. Same, I heard this week, there's another client who asked us to help them to get out of LTAC back into ICU. They were told, they need to send their loved one to a skilled nursing facility in another state. It's just sheer and utter madness. And at least here I'm educating you and I can help you how to get 2 steps ahead. All right. Now we've passed the 10 reasons, but I have more reasons because, I've been doing this for so long that, I've picked up so many things over the years There is another reason why LTACs are a scam. Let's break down the terminology. LTAC, long-term acute care hospital. Let's say that one more time. LTAC means long-term acute care hospital. Why are we creating a narrative of long-term illness? Why? Why don't we create a narrative of short-term acute care hospital, which at the end of the day means also ICU? Why are we trying to condemn people to long-term care? Why are we not opting for short-term care and try to speed up the process of recovery by doing all the right things, i.e. mobilization, physical therapy, have a weaning plan, have the right skill set, have the right mindset, why not? What's the problem here? Is it a systemic problem? Is it a systemic problem? We're focusing on the wrong things, and we're not creating the structures that are conducive for a good patient and family experience. Ask our clients, and ask the patients and families what they want. They don't want to be condemned to long-term care. They want to be short-term focused and get outcomes. Why are we not doing that? Is it, again, to maximize revenue for many hospitals, LTACs, and so forth? The question needs to be asked. Next, we are way beyond the 10 reasons. We are moving into more reasons. Unfortunately, there's no shortage of reasons why LTACs in the US are a scam, right? Okay, so another reason is insurance. So here's what we've seen over the years. Many ICUs tell families that, the insurance will stop paying for ICU care on whatever, 31st of May, right? As an example. Well, do you believe everything that the hospital is telling you? You need to talk to your health insurance or to your family member's health insurance. We've done that many times and advised families many times. Many of our clients we advise talk to the health insurance. And then it turns out the health insurance says, no, we are still happy to pay for ICU. We're still happy to do what is best for your loved one. So don't buy into the hospital's narrative of, insurance stops paying for ICU on day X. Never believe anything of that nature. You need to do your own research. You need to start thinking for yourself, right? Once again, the ICU might not be interested in getting any other payments for an ICU bed for your loved one because they have 10 other patients queuing up. Or, maybe they have an affiliation with the LTAC. Or they don't have staff in ICU so they can no longer accommodate your loved one. So once again, you have to read between the lines. So don't believe everything that you are told. You need to do your own research. Now, so what are some other solutions to avoid LTAC? Let's just talk about more solutions as well. For example, once again, we have helped so many families to stay in ICU instead of going to LTAC until they're weaned off the ventilator, so they can sometimes they can avoid the trach, sometimes they can avoid the PEG, right? And that only comes with advocacy. That only comes with, understanding intensive care and patient and family rights inside out, right? We often also review the medical records so we can, it's easy for us then to make a clinical argument why a loved one needs to stay in ICU and not go to LTAC. We almost have 100% success rate in keeping our clients in ICU instead of going to LTAC, right? We never really have an issue. So getting a second opinion and let us look at the medical records is really imperative for you to get outcomes. Very imperative. Now, I also want to talk about PEG tubes again, like I've been sort of pointing towards. Many families in intensive care in the US are pushed to go from a nasogastric tube to a PEG tube. And if that is the case, you should not give consent to a PEG tube. Like I explained to you before, in other English-speaking countries, a PEG tube is a very last resort for patients with a high spinal injury, motor neuron disease, SMA, Duchenne, cerebral palsy. That's when a PEG is unavailable, is imperative and can't be avoided. But in most cases, in 99% of cases in ICU, a PEG tube can be avoided. And if your loved one is on the path to weaning, which he or she should be, right? No PEG is needed. A temporary nasogastric tube will do the job. Next, I also need to talk about, that there's probably a higher incidence of mortality in LTAC. Again, we have seen when families come to us when they have a loved one in LTAC, they didn't know about us beforehand. They say to us, hey, I do believe my loved one is dying here, and they were meant to come for ventilation weaning, and then they realize it is a complete scam, right? And that's when things go pear-shaped. Unfortunately, like I said, when you have a loved one in intensive care, you are in a once-in-a-lifetime situation, and you cannot afford getting this wrong. You just can't. You don't want to be one of those families who reaches out to us and says, oh, I didn't know that you guys existed. My loved one has passed away now. And then you realize you've gotten it all wrong. You don't want to be living with that guilt. So that's my 10 reasons why LTACs in the US are a scam. You've seen I've had more than 10 reasons. And some of them were just coming as I was thinking along before this presentation, and some of them I was just thinking along while I was talking about the topic. Now, if you have any questions, you can ask them now. You can type them into the chat pad, or you can join me live on the show here if you click on the StreamYard link that I just posted in the chat pad. If you are watching this on replay, just type your comments or questions into the chat pad, and I will make a video about it at some point. So if you have any questions, please ask them now, type them into the chat pad, or join me live on the show now. I'm looking forward to your questions. Now, in the meantime, I will ask questions that have come in during the week while I wait for your questions. Here is a message from Desiree, who says, hi, Patrick. My mother has a tracheostomy but is not on a ventilator. I'm having difficulty finding an outpatient dialysis treatment that will accept her. So I've now begun looking into home dialysis, but I'm still getting hit with roadblocks. It's currently up in the air as to whether a local facility will train us or her so that she can receive treatment at home. Is this something intensive care at home could help with? Yeah, absolutely. This is definitely something that we can do at home with intensive care at home. So, if you're watching this and you're interested in intensive care at home, I encourage you to go to intensivecareathome.com, and you can contact us there. With intensive care at home, we are providing specialist home care nursing with intensive care nurses 24 hours a day, predominantly for long-term ventilation with tracheostomy, also for tracheostomy care at home without ventilation, but also BiPAP, CPAP ventilation, home TPN, port management, PICC line management, central line management, Hickman's line management, as well as IV potassium, IV magnesium infusions, palliative care, and home IV antibiotics. So this is definitely something we can help you with, Desiree. Like I said, currently with intensive care at home, we are operating all around Australia, in all major capital cities, as well as in regional and rural areas. We are NDIS accredited, WorkSafe and TAC in Victoria, iCare in New South Wales, and IISQ in Queensland, DVA all around the country. We've also received funding through public hospitals, private health funds, and departments of health. We're also providing level 2 and level 3 NDIS support coordination for intensive care at home. Now, let's move on to the next question, and probably also last question. If there are no other questions here, I will wrap this up in a minute. From Sarah, who says, my father is in Northwest Ohio. Does Medicare United Healthcare cover the cost for someone to help during the night? He's a quadriplegic with recent tracheostomy. He lives at home with a caretaker that lives with him. We just need someone to monitor tracheostomy for his caregiver to get to sleep through the night. Yes, absolutely. This is, again, something that intensive care at home can help with by sending a critical care nurse into the home. Very simple, right? We just have to find the right one for your family member, right? Next question. Do you have any questions while you're watching this? If you have any questions, please type them into the chat pad or join me live on the show by clicking on the StreamYard link. In the meantime, if there are no other questions, I will wrap this up in a minute. I will do another episode next week where I do another your Ask Me Anything episode, where you can ask me anything about your loved one being critically ill in intensive care. I usually do them on a Sunday morning, 10:30 a.m. Australia, Sydney, Melbourne time, which is 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on a Saturday night. In the US, which is 5:30 p.m. Pacific time in the US on a Saturday afternoon. Now, once again, if you like my videos, subscribe to my YouTube channel for regular updates for families in intensive care. Click the like button, click the notification bell, comment below what you want to see next, what questions and insights you have. Share the video with your friends and families. We also have a membership for families of critically ill patients in intensive care, and you can get access to it and become a member if you go to intensivecarehotline.com and you click on the membership link, or you go to intensivecaresupport.org directly. In the membership, you have access to me and my team 24 hours a day in the membership area and by email, and we answer all questions intensive care related. In the membership, you also have exclusive access to 21 ebooks and 21 videos that I personally have written and recorded for you. Those ebooks and videos will help you to make informed decisions, have peace of mind, control power and influence, making sure your loved one gets best care and treatment while they are in intensive care. I also offer one-on-one consulting and advocacy over the phone, Skype, Zoom, WhatsApp, whichever medium works best for you. I talk to you and your families directly. I handhold you through the process, and I make sure you are actually 2 steps ahead of the intensive care team and not the other way around. I also talk to doctors and nurses directly in intensive care, and I ask all the questions that you haven't even considered asking, but must be asked when you have a loved one in intensive care. And once again, I'll make sure you make informed decisions, you have peace of mind, control power, influence, making sure your loved one gets best care and treatment. I also represent you in family meetings with intensive care teams. We also offer medical record reviews in real time so that you can get a second opinion in real time. We also offer medical record reviews after intensive care if you have unanswered questions, if you need closure, or if you are suspecting medical negligence. And all of that you get at intensivecarehotline.com. Call us on one of the numbers on the top of our website, or send us an email to support@intensivecarehotline.com. Thank you so much for watching. This is Patrick Hutzel from intensivecarehotline.com. Look out for the emails. Look out for the emails that are coming during the week. Look out for the videos that are coming during the week. And I will talk to you then. Take care for now.